Yay, here we are for another podcast of Surrender is a Verb. I'm Nikki Hartel, and I am so happy to be sitting next to, feels like I'm sitting in the same room with Kerry Cleopatra. Thank you for being here, Kerry.
Thanks so much for having me. It does feel a bit that way, doesn't it? It's magic when you're just being present regardless of where you are in the world. That's the beauty.
It's the joy of technology. I think of it as modern magic.
I think it's beyond technology though, isn't it? Because we could be on this Zoom using the literal wires and non-wires and technology, but it's more than that. This is energetic technology.
Absolutely.
This has been, yeah.
And I feel like that energetic technology that you're speaking about right now, there's a sense of an acceleration of that energy that's happening now on the planet. But we see, this is what happens. We just go straight into it. It's awesome. I love it. So before we get into the juiciness, Kerry, please share who you are, who you be, what you do, your magic with everybody who's listening.
Well, Kerry Cleopatra, and I do where I'm drawn in the space and time, and it's evolved over the years of how that looks, but it's always been the same core that I'm here to help humanity in its remembering, in its awareness, and in its fullness of being. And the work in recent times, as it matches your evolution in a sense. And as I've experienced this incredible embodied, which came from surrender in a profound way, but this incredible embodiment that was not something I was trying to do. It happened to me, and I wasn't trying to make it happen.
Right.
It's sort of kind of surrender in a different way, and I'd love to chat about that at some point. So the work is evolving in a way that I still serve in the joyful sense of serving, not in the I am not enough, so I'm here to serve or make up for anything, or all the things that I've believed and felt in this lifetime and others. And I know many of us who are giving people have given out of heart and love, yet there's been the wounds of, dare I say, and not putting everyone in the same category, but not enoughness. And it's a joy to be just offering the magics that come through us as we allow the spaciousness in us, and offering that. And as you know, you have been one of my guides and sisters, and I consider myself a guide for the guides. Every guide needs their sisters and their guides. We're a sisterhood, and that support is wonderful. Like it's a necessity, I feel, in my experience. And I'm not new to the path. I've done it alone. I've done it together. And this is probably the most incredible time on our planet for really learning to listen in and connect with who are your tribe, who are your people for now. Not making anyone else wrong or right. Simply who are you drawn to align with now, and trusting yourself in that. And I don't know if I answered any of your questions then.
You did beautifully. So I think that sense of sisterhood and support, like the word, a friend of mine, she calls herself a sideline sister. I love that phrase. It's so important right now to have that connection. And there can be a lot of, I know for myself personally, I always desired to create a community over the years. Many, many years ago, I had a community called the Abundance Circle. And then before that or after that, I can't even remember. At some stage, I called it the new normal. And if I look back at all of those that when you were talking about that not enoughness, about creating when you still have all those wounds, if I'm really honest and I look back at all those communities that I was trying to create, it came from that energy of trying to serve, which is what you were talking about so beautifully. And the moment that I let that go and just trusted in, it almost feels like the community appeared, the community that I was always desiring, the sisters that I was always feeling that I wanted to connect with. There they were, without the trying. So thank you for bringing it into my awareness, because I've never actually thought of it that way. And you're one of the sisters, of course.
Thank you. I feel honored and blessed, and I feel the same. I feel the same. And it's funny, over the years I've worked with women that are incredible women, and at the time they've just needed that assistance to align with their next incredibleness. And I, as I've said, and funny, especially if they're older than me, like if I remember one lady, she's amazing. She was nearly 80. And at the time, I think I was about maybe 40 something, 30. Actually, I was in my 30s. And I could see she was shifting in her seat and feeling a bit, I just said straight out to her, and I do this with a bit of tongue in cheek. I said, don't think that I think I was 38, 39 at the time. Don't worry about my age in this body now, because you're assuming your age and my age. I said, I've been here 473 times. So, who's counting age? and we had a bit of a giggle. But my point is to have her relax into who she is, where she is, exactly in that moment in time, no matter how we're wrapped up. I had a session with a young lady today. I normally work with women more my sort of transition point, but I'm getting the call to assist some of the younger women coming through, young mums, etc. And I'm dreaming my remembering into me in those places, and how did I honor a sense of me in all the chaos. And I, as I said to this young lady as well, I said, I'm in a different place now, in a different transition. So please be kind to yourself as I'm sharing what your body's telling me and what I'm getting for you. There's no wrong or right. It's simply love and awareness around these things. And I did say something to her, and life just met it magically. I picked up a tissue to use it to, I'm very visual, and I was showing her, I said, when you're 63, funny numbers come to me. When you're 63, there will be this full integration and embodiment from where you are now and what you're transforming to that completion of transforming. And you'll have this moment when you're 63, 64, and you'll go, oh, that's what it is. That's what she meant. I said, but in the meantime, and I just showed the tissue, and honestly, this tissue was pulling apart so perfectly, illustrating how we're just shifting energy. We're just transforming energy. But this is not wrong, this stuff we're transforming. And this is not righter. It's aligning. It's just transforming and completing what we decided to, what we're here for. It's evolution of who we are. I get really excited about this understanding of energy and just beautifully, lovingly surrendering into all of who we are. And the moment and the now, without the wrong, the right, the judgments, yet firm, loving kindness where it's needed, etc. I get very loving about this and very emotional, but not in the way of wounded, Kerry. And it's because I've walked it as well. I've walked the wounds. I've worn the wounds. I've formed and shaped so many expressions of the work I do based on heart, yet still with the wounds as part of the push, so that your wounds can serve you.
Absolutely.
They're not wrong. We're not wrong.
No,
Isn't it?
everything happens for us at the end of the day, but it takes a bit to get to that point of understanding. And Kerry, just as you were talking about the right and wrong, because for me, that was also a very big part of my surrender journey, that ability to be able to really feel, understand, accept, allow, but really to be embodied in that truth that there is no right or wrong. It connects you to that energy of neutrality, which it's just the, I want to say it's like the isness is what I'm feeling right now. That to me feels like the energy of surrender. That really is what surrender is when we're able to just surrender to that. And in order to do that, well, there's no in order to, but for me, it feels like from my own personal journey, there was definitely an element of trust, trusting in, having faith in, that allows that energy of surrender. Just as you were talking, I was like, ooh, and then you can peel those layers that you're talking about, the tissue, right? It almost, if you really allow it to happen, then you don't even have to peel the tissue. It will naturally fall, those layers will naturally fall off. I'm speaking very badly right now, but I think you understand what I'm saying.
You're not. It's just that when we're articulating that which is beyond words, that
Yeah.
which is to be only fully embodied, integrated, understood, felt, seen, whatever we want to use, it's so beyond words. And while you were speaking, I can't remember which point. There was a point where I just went, ah. So if you're listening to this podcast, I actually rewind that bit and listen in again, because there was a point, Nikki, and I think if you listen in, you'll go, ooh. But I love this bit. I wrote this down. Surrender into all that is, the isness.
Yeah.
It's known sometimes as the nirvana and many, many things. And I have danced with these ways of life and understandings, and I have shaken myself out of them as well, out of the glorious tree and back onto the ground, and gone a few more rounds to deepen my experience and understanding. And who knows, I might do that again. You never know.
I remember you sharing with me the one time when you were talking now about dancing with that energy. In one of our sessions, you shared with me being on a mountain and a time that you felt that you came into your body almost for the first time. Would you
Yeah.
be comfortable
Yeah.
sharing?
Well, you're very in tune, because to be honest, I didn't come into this podcast going, right, I'm going to talk about this and this. I really just surrender into this and be with you and trust. But I did know that I was wanting to mention a mountain moment.
A mountain
And this
moment.
is a mountain moment because it was, I think in everyday life, I experience and live extraordinary. It's just my relationship with, and it hasn't always been that way. And I know that you're a woman, and I know that we have probably all our listeners, all of us, men, women, that there have been times which have been pretty darn ordinary. And I remember God, and you can insert any word you want there, but creation God saying to me once, Kerry, humanity we have gone to the darkest of the dark. We have gone to the edge of all that is. There is nothing else that can be seen, can be done, can be felt, can be heard. It's all been done. We're coming back in, coming home. And hence why a lot of the dark cavities are being shown, so that we can continue to bring in the light. And I have this feeling, and this is digressing, recently I've been just feeling it and saying it a lot, that for want of a better word, darkness, evil, whatever you want to say, it's just a lack of light. It's, in other words, a lack of love. And I feel that that for us just to be here, and our dedication is to be the love and light that we are, that is enough. That is more than enough. And what does it take for that? Whatever it takes for that. So that was a digression.
That was a beautiful digression, though. Thank you.
The digression. I want to be clear that I think it can be annoying listening to people sometimes who are living bliss. I would say I'm living bliss and you are living bliss, yet we still have teenagers and things and challenges. It's just that we're able to not let these things define us anymore and cripple us, and it's faith and it's trust. That's not something that someone told us, it's something we've embodied. Do you relate with that?
Absolutely. I can say if I look back at the last 6 months, it's probably been one of the hardest 6 months, but throughout the journey, I am constantly surrendering. I'm constantly in deep faith and deep trust and deep peace. So it's been the most peaceful 6 months, and also been a crazy 6 months, both and at the same time. But it's the ability to have that inner peace, which comes from surrendering, which comes from the deep trust and the deep faith. You can talk about surrender and you can understand the concepts. I mean, I remember reading about surrender so many years ago and just wanting to surrender. But it's something that it's an embodiment.
Look, maybe it's like, if we're going to offer, I still want to answer the mountain question.
Yes,
Don't forget
the
that one.
mountain moment is coming for sure.
The mountain moment. And dare I say as well, your grace in the last 6 months, you wouldn't know that you've been going through such challenges. And that, I think, is something that happens. The grace is, with the faith and grace is at the forefront. It's not a fake front. It's just from the core into the forefront. It's the light emanating, and you have been emanating that beautiful light. I just thought I'd say that.
Thank you.
And I know that a lot of us have had incredibly challenging. How do you put time on it? 6 months. Do you remember the last year? Do you remember the year before? Well, it's like, well, riding a few horses, and sometimes they buck for sure. So, what was my thought? Where was I going with that one? If you imagine, right, that if you want to imagine that you want to swim in the most beautiful pool of water, imagine the most soft, like the water feels like silk and soft, and everything feels supported. Everything, in fact, you don't even need support, because you're just in this feeling of, it's almost like being in an amniotic fluid. There's no fear of what's to come. There's no fear of what's been. It's just this beautiful fluidic water. Now, let's just say that this water also has minerals in it. It has some clay, it has some bugs, it has some reeds, it has all sorts of things. Surrender's a little bit like, well, you can be in that water, and sometimes you only feel the reeds and the fear of, like, oh, what's in the slimy things? Oh, what was that? The surrender is still there. The joy, like, it's all still there. The fluidity is there. The trust, that life, that that way of is there. It's just that as we evolve, all of a sudden, perhaps the bits of reeds and things are not even noticeable by us. They're not a concern. They're not a concern. We're welcomed in our fear and transformed, or what we've done some work. And then we might notice the grittiness, and then we do some more work. But you keep showing up, like you keep immersing yourself. Immersing yourself. And if you can do that with joy and without expectation, because the expectation is something that's putting pressure on you and nothing and no one else. No one's in a hurry for you. No one's saying, come on, you've got to do this. It's our own expectation and pressure. And an interesting thing, as you know, is that if you force something, then it's never truly yours or their experienced.
It's
So
the allowance of
it's an
the
interesting
reeds. Let the reeds be there. Let the murky waters be there, and trusting that you are always held and you are always supported.
Yeah, it's interesting that two different people could be in that same water, and one is in great fear and the other one is going, thank God, this is amazing.
Yeah. And there's a saying that's popping in now, which I love, which is it's easier to walk in faith than it is to walk in stress or anxiety or worry. It's easier to walk in faith than it is to walk in worry.
Yeah. You know, when you've got a client who's in a bit of resistance, and fair enough, you know, it's a natural response sometimes. But I have a bit of a giggle sometimes. I go, well, you may as well, let's say you've got some things to change. Staying where you are has a sense of pain to it. So what if we have a little bit of pain for a while, but you're steering the ship now? You know, at least you're stepping forward so that you can step out. You know, make that pain be purposeful.
Yeah.
And by the way, it doesn't always have to be painful.
No.
Especially with surrender.
Yeah. I think if we can rest in that allowance, then it doesn't have to be painful. But if we resist it, and if we're also not listening to what is coming through for us, and we ignore because we think we know better, or we think, no, we need to do the logical thing, we need to do the responsible thing. It doesn't matter that everything else is pulling me in this direction. It doesn't make sense. And so we resist that, and we do that over and over again. I mean, I have many stories like that, but we could be here forever then that's when you land up, boom, on your face or on your back.
Like it really takes practice. And I can say without doubt that you and I having this conversation and our understanding and experience has come about, and goodness knows what we talk about in 5 years, 10 years, it has come about because how much have you practiced? How much have you fallen on your face? And you know, it can start with little things like you're walking out the door and the little voice says, just grab the dalala, you might need it. And you go, oh, no, it'll be fine. And off you go and you're out. And then you go, damn, I needed that. Should have listened to that voice. Just call that practice. And surrender is a practice. It's not an overnight success. If you want to embody something, then make the decision to, and then open yourself up and hang on for the ride sometimes.
Yeah. I love that though, because your point actually makes the idea of surrender something that you can like wrap your hands around and say, okay, I can do this, because it's just moment by moment. So it's just every moment. And it's about listening to your intuition, your soul's intelligence, spirit, source, God, the universe, and listening. Number one. And in order to listen, we need to be still, be in the moment in order to be able to hear what's coming through. And then trusting enough to be able to take the action. And that's why this podcast is called Surrender is a Verb, because for me, the Surrendering, yes, there's definitely a moment of, it's the ebbs and the flows. So we have the ebbs. We have the sense sometimes of being in a void where we're just like, what's going on? And you can question everything. I remember a time last year, about a year ago, where I felt like I was being emptied out. And I remember standing in my garden and going, why am I even here? What is this all about? What is the point of life? And then immediately after that, all these ideas come in, the downloads come in, the inspiration comes in, the clarity comes in, and then it's about trusting to take the action.
Yeah. And I've had plenty of those moments where I've gone, well, then why do we do all this? Why are we going through all this? Why are we here? I've had plenty of those moments. And now I just feel, I feel incredibly grateful for the adventure that is life. I use the word adventure a lot.
Yeah.
Just incredibly grateful. And I don't need to know it all. I have moments of the oneness with all that is. I've had incredibly beyond words moments, and that's usually in great states of some form of surrender, whether that surrender is something I have instigated or I have fallen to the ground and just absolutely fallen, literally my whole body, and just I got nothing left. And I've been in that surrender that's come from pure pain, exhaustion, resistance, all the things. And I believe that quite a few of us have been through things like this, moments like this, where your whole body, you just, and because there's nothing left to do, just don't know, you run out of places to go outside of yourself. And I've had moments like that where I've literally stopped breathing, and I've literally just been in this a void or an abyss, not scary, just still. Couldn't tell you how long for. And then have a conversation that's not even a conversation. It's not really words. It's really just my whole being is just saying, yeah, I've got nothing left. And then it's like just a moment of like, breathe, Kerry. You're staying. Take a breath. And I didn't straight away. And then the stillness was so lovely. But then I listened and I took a breath. And that's what, if you've ever experienced anything like that, it doesn't have to be the same. It's kind of like what I liken to a rebirth. It's like the death of something become the ending and the surrendering and the death of that which no longer serves us. And it's it's not just the shedding of one skin. It's almost like the shedding of many. You've really done a grand circle. And that was that was just one. I remember probably a point of surrender where I didn't try to surrender. I fell to surrender. I had nothing left. I had no fight in me. I had nothing left. I've surrendered that way. I've also surrendered consciously. Like, show me. I surrender. I don't, leave me, and all the things. There's been lots of ways of surrender, and now I feel like it's a state of being in a sense. And if I get too lost in my head, I stop what I'm doing, go, not acceptable anymore. And I just come back to grassroots simple. It's like whether I'm just going to ground myself, put my feet literally on the earth, literally have the ionic exchange, or I'm holding a tree, or whatever it is. I come back to earth elements, and earth elements bring me back into my body fully. There was this I call it a secret form of surrender, right? It's a secret because I didn't know of it. This is the mountain one.
Oh, okay. Share.
Yeah. Well, I was in a pretty amazing place. And we were in contact, actually. Do you remember when I was staying in this amazing part of the world called the Snowy Mountains area of Victoria in Australia? And I was literally staying in a log cabin, quite isolated in the mountains. I was house sitting, threw myself there, surrendered to it, thinking, oh my goodness, I just knew I needed to be there. In that time, funny enough, from the moment I landed my feet there, I was there for 3 weeks, yet somehow I downloaded and launched. That's when I launched 7 Beautiful Days and guided a dozen women. Days. It's like, wow, that was complete surrender. But I hiked a lot because I love being alone and with nature. It's not lonely, it's alone. And there's these points of these mountains are rugged. I mean, watch The Man from Snowy River and it gives you a bit of an idea. Honestly, they're rugged. And I know you've got some country like this in South Africa too. And I was up on top of these major boulders, sitting on top of boulders. And like, honestly, if you fall, you're kaput. So, and you've got
completely surrendered. You're done.
Giving back organically and someone finds you, who knows? But it was quite a isolated hiking place. I know because it wasn't a known place yet. So I'm there and I had a few things happening, but which were little mini surrenders. But I was just at peace. I was just in this neutrality and this joy and gratitude and just breathing in the air. It's the middle of winter but the sun was out that day. And I had this God moment, like the big kahuna of grace, that condensation of intelligent, beautiful, graceful energy. And I was standing on this rock and I got called to surrender. I said, surrender, Kerry. And I said, okay, but I feel good. I don't have anything to surrender. It's like, surrender, Kerry. I'm like, what am I going to surrender? Hang on, let me think. What have I got to surrender? I don't feel anything I need to surrender. So I'm having this conversation. And then I went, all right, okay. I tell you what, I'm just going to surrender. I'm just going to sit. And I sat just so I didn't fall off. And I sat and just said, okay, I don't know. I'm here. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to articulate this, but I didn't fall into surrender. Surrender came into me. It's like, let me just see if I can articulate this well. I just sat. I didn't try anything. There was no surrendering. It was just, I guess, allowing, maybe, just being. And I felt this wave of surrender. I've never quite experienced anything like it, but surrender was the prime, what I was told. And it's like the surrender came into me. The surrendered into me. I can't muddy this with any more words.
Sounds beautiful. For me, it's a sense of merging with the isness.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. I don't want to muddy it with words either. That's why I'm allowing it to just sit and let it be here and for everybody to feel that. Beautiful. I remember that time, and I remember you sharing it. I think we were running, it may have been coded clients. I'm not sure. It was one of the programs. And I remember you coming in and sharing that you had had this experience. And it was, the sense was, the word that's coming through is like awe. Just being in awe of this experience that you had. And at the time, I remember the way that you described it was definitely a sense of being in your body, this connection to your body, almost as if it felt like for the first time.
Yeah. Yeah. It was what had happened before that. I had was climbing the Arapiles Mountains, and I don't fall. Like when I'm present, I don't fall. But I became unpresent. I got angry about something, and I let that anger rattle me. And so therefore I wasn't in tune and as grounded as normal. And that was an incredible experience. I'm really grateful for it, as tough as it was at the time. And I had a fall up on top of this thing. The only way to get me off is airlift me, or I have to crawl down. It took me 2.5 hours with the help of SES and numerous rescue workers. And it was like an incredible, it was a tough but beautiful experience at the same time, and a beautiful experience of surrender, of the me that didn't like to cause a fuss, etc. It was like, I have no choice. I'm not getting off here without help. And so that was a really amazing experience. Like I said, it was tough. But the week preceding, I was in a moon boot, and I ended up with a herniated disc, and just didn't know that that's what could happen with the imbalance from the moon boot, etc. And I was isolated. I was house sitting again in another place, and this was before the mountains. And I remember, now I see things, that everything is happening. Like this is true or not true, I don't mind. But for me, I make it part of my way of being, that it's happening for me. How is this happening for me, rather than to me? And I do acknowledge pain, anger, pissed offness. I do give myself grace and space for that now. I never used to be so good at that. And yet I don't allow that to carry on or over into becoming the next level of problem or story. I just allow the space so that the energy can transform. And that took practice to get to that place. So I'm in pain. I'm on my own. I always tend to house sit in isolated places because I love nature. And I was trying to get to the toilet. I was in so much pain, and I have a really decent pain threshold because I can breathe through a lot. And I'm crawling and crying, and I get to the toilet and I couldn't get up onto the toilet. So I just peed my pants. And I just remember And I remember crying and laughing at the same time. I thought, well, what are you going to do? I can sit here and cry about it, but really, it's a little bit funny. And you know, I can always find the humour. The next week or two, I had no choice but to either go the medical realms, which were not usually, they don't meet me in my understanding of life quite often. I knew that I didn't have a herniated disc for no reason. And I crawled to the yoga mat, and I just surrendered fully. Please show me, body, what you need me to know. Please, what do I need here? Show me. And I had the most incredible, difficult experience. I actually went into like a birthing process, birthed the child that I lost, and I felt it and I breathed, and it was incredible. And it was to do with talking about universal magic, all to do with an experience with a person who did not respect my body at one point in time and left me in trouble. And funny enough, this person was a mountain climber, and it occurred to me, this is how magic life is. I went, oh my God, he's been where I fell. And I have not processed the anger. I realized, because this guy was a world-class mountain climber, and I realized that he'd been there. I could see his face. I could see it, and I saw me fall, and I saw him looking at me. And I went, oh my God, how incredibly amazing is life. Yes, I had pain. Yes, it was tough. Yes, you know, and I realized, because this happened when I was in my early 30s, and I had to keep going as a mum. So I went, oh, I haven't fully, like that, still holding energetically in my body. I haven't fully finished that. I had this blessing of this fall, incredible pain. That pain helped me release a lot of energy, almost as if you're saying, you know, a lot of people do a juicing fast and they go too fast and they get really sick. You don't want to go too fast because it can be quite toxic. And pain can be a bit like that. We don't want too much at once if we can help it. But I trusted my body and I knew my capability in a sense. And so I had the most incredible experience of releasing these pains and things I'd stored until I had space in my life to deal with them. And it never feels convenient, by the way. So it feels quite convenient. But I swear to you, and this is not my only magical experience. I think life is magic. I know it is. It's miraculous. But it was one that I remember well. I heaved and I birthed and I cried and I surrendered and I thanked and you know, when you just, ooh, and I sat quietly and there was a stillness that is just, you know, those stillnesses.
Yeah.
And I just thought, when it felt ready, I thought, I wonder if, and I actually stood up off that yoga mat and I couldn't walk before that. And I stood. I went, whoa, wow. I was standing.
Wow.
And I thought, wow, you know, that's, I've had this disc issue for less than a week and they take a lot longer. It went back in. I was still sore. I wasn't about to go run around and climb mountains. I wanted to honor the rest of the processes, whatever they might be. But that was quite miraculous, and that was full surrender. And it was within a few days. I kept just walking a little bit each day. And I think at the time, actually, Nikki, I was listening to I was doing one of your courses, and it was just one of those beautiful things to listen to every day. I can't remember which one it was, to be honest. It might have been I Am a Magnet. I might have been listening to it again, going over it. I loved that. If you haven't done I Am a Magnet, do it. It's so beautiful. It's so transformative. I love that. So a few days later, I'm just walking and just feeling trust, joy, bliss, gratitude, even though I'd been through quite a bit of trauma in that fortnight also. And then something happened and I went, oh, this is the first time. It just happened in that moment. This is the first time I have been fully in my body.
Wow.
And then from there, I just had compassion and understanding as to why parts of me would flit in and out. Trauma will do that, things like that. And I went, most people, I just knew it. I knew this is a message for me and an experience. And I went, most people don't even know that they're not fully embodied. And I knew from that moment that that was my next
Evolution.
evolution and the next interweaving into the work that I share.
Wow.
And what it takes, the ingredients of being human, of remembering who you are, and you using the natural earthly elements, our God-given creation, to be all of who you are. Mm.
That is so powerful, and it's making me remember. And it's interesting because I feel like there's so many things you've shared, such a beautiful story that is going to help so many people with the understanding that really energy is at the basis of everything.
Mm.
And that our bodies, our physical bodies, will show us when we are out of alignment. And that takes me back to the, let's call it a tip, a way that you can practice surrender, which is just listening, listening, listening. And it can be a small thing, like you mentioned, when you're leaving the house and you get a nudge, turn left, don't turn right, or even cook this for dinner, don't cook that. It doesn't have to be big things, but it's about the more that you do that, the more that you're tapped in. So if anyone's listening and you're thinking, how am I ever going to experience what Kerry experienced? Because it sounds, I mean, the magic of what you shared is incredible.
You may not need to, though. Yeah.
No, everybody's going to experience it their own way. And we're always connected. We're always connected. We're never not connected. It's just our level of awareness. But I remember, I think it was in I'm a Magnet, because I feel like I remember that. And interestingly enough, in one of the I'm a Magnet lessons, I had an experience of, it was when I had the understanding drop in of multiple timelines, which I shared into I'm a Magnet at the time. And I had at that time a pop. I felt a pop in my lower back. And that was also a shift of energy. And I heard the words when it happened, because I often hear things like voices, clairaudient. And I heard the words being let down. And I knew in that instance that I was releasing, letting go, surrendering the idea of being let down by people around me.
Oh,
and it was so powerful. And I knew as well, when I felt that pop, like I knew that my lower back problems, which had been with me for years, I knew it was gone. It was shifted. And so for anybody listening, to realize that if you are struggling with any physical ailments, that there is at the core of that, at the root of that, the essence of that is energetic. And that can be empowering when you really take that on and allow yourself to believe that. Because the thing with energy, when you work with energy, as you know, is that it can be the magic. It can be that instantaneous healing. It's here for us to experience. That was the one. There was something else that I wanted to share, but I can't remember. It's left me now. But what an incredible story, Kerry.
Well, my understanding of energy from back when I first perhaps was even introduced to the idea of the term. I mean, I lived and breathed it to an extent when I was a kid, but I squished it and I didn't understand it. And I went through evolutions of becoming, and it's not an overnight thing. And I think that if we can drop our expectation of how our own evolvement needs to look, and certainly don't compare. I mean, I'm in my crone years now. I'm in that transition now where I'm like yourself, a guide to the guides in a sense. And that just comes from walking it, from walking and experience and lifetimes and not assuming. And energy is incredible. It honestly is. The way life works to even what I understand now, and goodness knows what it is tomorrow and the next day. The way energy is, it is so intelligent. It just completely makes sense when you get it. There's just such a simplicity in the complexity. The biggest thing I can say, I feel, is if you want to change something, improve something, transform something, please follow that feel. Follow that soul call, because usually, especially if they're persistent, and they're usually a soul call, and have a sense of humor. Sometimes you've got to get serious. You've got to have just a sense of humor sometimes, kindness and compassion, and just keep showing up for as many times as it takes. I honestly have nearly wanted to, well, I did want to leave the planet many times. And I mean, I've been in an absolute mess. And I believe, and I remember saying, I came out of my workshop, I was in my early 40s, and I'd come around the bend of yet another understanding. It was probably not long after that one where I just fell to the ground completely, like lost any sense of myself, etc. And I remember going, I believe we don't always have to learn through pain. I truly believe we can learn through joy. I believe that if we learn to listen in, if we learn to honor and slow down and be human, that it doesn't have to be so painful. And frankly, I learn through joy most of the time now. That wasn't an overnight success. It's a world I decided upon. So
I love that so much. I love that so much. I want to break out in song. It's so important because we think, that whole story about for artists and creatives. And I mean, I've got a son who's very creative. He's an artist and he plays music. And there's still, it's almost like you can feel it. It's almost feels like a collective energy that's still sitting in the ethers. This idea of you have to suffer in order to have this beautiful creative expression birthed through you. But we don't have to suffer. And yes, if we do suffer, it's okay. And we learn from it and it happens for us and all those beautiful things. But I want you to repeat that for everybody listening. This energy of joy that we get to create in the energy of joy, and we get to be embodied in the energy of joy, and that we don't necessarily have to suffer.
I agree. I think you've said it again anyway. But it is the world that I decided. It is the world that I decided. And I no longer decide, I no longer kind of went, oh, you're a dreamer, or well, what if I'm wrong? Or what? Actually, I did. I had some voices doubting. And I went, nah, I think it can be done. And I know now, because I do live and breathe it. I still have pain sometimes.
Of course.
And I think that, in a sense, the generational wounds and the humanity, like, we're plugged into different elements and layers of being, to an extent where we've got our own energy that's embodied in our body, but in our body is the embodiment of generations. It's also the embodiment of humanity.
Right.
And so keep that in mind when you're doing your stuff. Like, don't believe all the spiritual teachings that are, you must have. I remember thinking, geez, I must have been a really shitty person in another lifetime. Because man, the karma. Don't believe all that stuff. I'm calling bullshit on a lot of the spiritual stuff, right? And by the way, spiritual is just going within and learning about who you are. And that is one of the most powerful things you can do. The spirit of who you are.
It's being human, actually.
Yeah. And the other thing is, I don't know if this is digressing, but I mean, I have been in that state of nirvana for a good year. I mean, I used to, like, when I say nirvana, that's that place where you're just in peace all the time.
Yeah.
Right? I have to say, it did get boring. I didn't have the pain, the deep pain, but I also didn't have the pee my pants laughter. And something happened. I disrupted my life with falling pregnant with my son, and I felt like I had a lobotomy and fell on the earth. Like, I went, oh my gosh, I'm an energy worker, and I got no energy, and I was sick, and I was like, honestly, I went right through processes that I thought I'd already done, but I went through again and went and deepened. It's just a deepening. It's just a deepening and an expansion.
It's a deepening. It's a deepening. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's not that didn't get it last time or you're failing. You're just going in for another deepening and an expansion of being. And life, if you want to take anything from today, and goodness knows there's been a bit in there, just celebrate. You've come in to have human experience, so why go and meditate your way out of it? Sure, meditate the stillness, but don't try and override being human. That is a lie.
Yeah.
Just love it. Love having skin. Love being. Love your quirky bits, the pointy bits. Just go, wow, this is what I chose.
Yeah.
And what is in this for me? Who am I in this? And what now? Relish being human, and don't let anyone else convince you to override that, because you did not come in to your magnificent human body just to try and get out of it. That's what I would say.
Amen, sister. I love it. And as you were sharing, it reminded me of the other point that I wanted to bring up earlier when you were sharing in your last story. It's the deepening. It's the deepening and the embodiment. One of the first moments that I experienced alchemy. And alchemy really is a shift in energy. So the stories that you've shared, for me, if I listen to them, a lot of those are, it's transmutation, it's alchemy, it's shifting, where you're not the same that you were a couple of seconds ago. And that's the beautiful thing about energy. And for me, the first time that I felt deeply embodied in my body for the first time was when I worked with the element of air. And I was moving through a process of embodying the elements. Fire was amazing, but when I moved into, well, amazing was traumatic too, let me add, because everything that needed to be healed came up to be healed. But when I moved into air, there was a sense, it was very similar to what you were describing, that sense of, I'm in my body for the first time. It wasn't earth, interestingly enough, it was air, because I think it was a case of me being able to see, recognize, see the unseen of the fullness of me in my body, if that makes sense. And I felt to be Nikki. I remember I was 42 at the time, and I remember saying to myself, my God, you're 42 and you're only in your body now. You only know who you really are now. And it was an incredible moment. And it wasn't one moment, it was many moments that just continued to grow. And that's when people started saying, wow, Nikki, you look different. What's happened? Have you lost weight? Have you changed your hair? You're glowing. Are you pregnant? No, nothing. I had a similar experience when I started connecting with parallel realities about 2 months ago, and connecting with these parallel realities that are already here. I have been tapping into versions of myself, and I don't even want to use the word versions because it almost gives the impression that it is not me. It's another version of me, but it's all me, where I am so deeply embodied that it feels again like I have met myself again for the very first time. And for the first time being in my body again as Nikki. And this is my point. The biggest shift for me was seeing all these, and it's not even seeing all these versions of me, but being in all these different versions of me. And I'm talking about, now this is going to really sound wacky, but hey, we're here for it. I'm talking about versions of me where I'm not with my husband, versions of me where I am with my husband, but the relationship is completely different. But in all these versions, I am me. I'm Nikki. I'm human in this lifetime. And the essence of who I am, the essence of me, is the same in all of them. And so for anybody listening, even if you're listening and you're thinking this sounds really crazy, if you can just take or feel the truth that who you are in this moment right now, the essence of who you are is always there. It's always there. And therefore, we don't have to try and be spiritual, coming back to your point in a very long way. We don't have to try and be spiritual. These moments where I've had these experiences are actually moments where I haven't been meditating. They're just moments where I'm just being human and living my life moment by moment.
Mm.
So that part about being human, I often say that some of the most spiritual people I know are not spiritual at all. And I think it's a beautiful thing. So thank you for bringing that all out.
Wow, that's fascinating. You can't help but think of sliding doors. And the thing is that the difference between what you said and, say, sliding doors that I felt was that you were the same essence of who you are. You were Nikki. You were the essence, whether you're going with the name Nikki in this lifetime or what have you. It's the essence of who you are. And it didn't seem to matter what the story or detail is. And I think that that's a really important point. If one is waiting to become, when I'm in my loving relationship, then I'll be, or
Yeah,
when I this, then I'll be. Just be your essence, no matter the detail, no matter the circumstances.
yeah,
There,
that's it.
there. Welcome to who you are.
Yeah.
No, that's
Oh,
beautiful.
thank you, Kerry.
Thank you.
Mm. Ooh, I think we have come to a close. I feel like we are complete. That was such a
Oh,
beautiful conversation. I really enjoyed it. Thank you for being here and for sharing your heart and just being so deeply embodied and present in this space that we created together. And before we end, please share with the listeners where they can find you and if there is anything that you are creating in your business now that you want to share.
well, just taking a moment to, I'm very grateful to be having free conversation, where we just show up and don't over explain and just trust in the listener and in the conversation and in the moment, just to share from heart what comes through. So for that, I'm very grateful. Thank you. And well, I'm changing a few things, but at the moment you can still find me on Facebook. I just run a personal page, Kerry Cleopatra, on there, and I've got EKOO, EKOO, EKOO Body and Soul. You should be able to find me. I've started a YouTube account and you can find me there. So it is EKOO, EKOO, 333. That's where I'm going to be putting all the goodies, because I just I'm wanting to and sharing on lots of different ways that I can offer free just giving as they come through. And then ways for people to access understandings of who they are, energy and life, and many things. I've downloaded all these courses that I just feel are like, start somewhere. So you can pick any of these and they will be part of bringing you closer to who you are in fullness. And that's a joy. So I'm currently, and as you know, working through the technical sides of getting them actually up into the ethers so people can reach them. But I would say go to eku.love, get on the newsletter. And so once I'm releasing things, and there'll be, like I said, free stuff, some things that you invest in yourself with, and then there'll be live immersive stuff. I love working live immersive and retreats where we can come together from anywhere in the world to be. And I mean, the magic in it all. It's about accessibility and yet spaciousness in my realm, so that I can just be a channel and a receiver and a joyful human being and not a stressed one. So, does that answer that question?
It's beautiful.
But at the moment,
Thank you so much
thank
for
you.
being here. And
Thank you.
I want to say I have a feeling that we might do this again because it was such a juicy conversation. I feel like we probably need to have a part 2 at some stage.
Anytime, anytime. And I mean, what a groovy podcast you've done. What a heart-honoring podcast. Surrender is a verb. I mean, it's no surprise coming from you. You are just you are the epitome of going yes and just releasing and doing and sharing and not overthinking it all. Like,
I will
kudos to you.
say, thank you, Kerry. And I will say for anybody listening, because this is part of Surrender is a Verb, and what I want people to get from this podcast is exactly that, not getting into overthinking. And when it came to this podcast actually came through a moment of surrender. And I haven't actually shared this with anyone yet. I had a similar experience to being just physically on my knees and going, oh, and then having that moment of silence that you spoke about. And then the name of the podcast dropped in, Surrender is a Verb. And I was like, right, this is why. And then deciding to launch it, I went into, okay, I need to have a beautiful intro. I need to have a beautiful outro. I need to get myself a microphone. I need to get new branding. And then I was like, I'll be here till next year. If I need to do all of that, I'm going to just get it out there. And as I move along, I can always work on all of those things. And so there is no intro and outro and music, and it's just the podcast. Okay. Thank you, and have a beautiful day.
Yeah, you too. Bye.